Vito Corleone makes it to his surprise dinner, while Captain Kirk sings happy birthday to Spock. These movie scenes could have changed everything if only they hadn't hit the cutting room floor. The early moments of The Incredibles display some nostalgic heroism and set the stage for a villainous reveal. Yet this approach wasn't always a part of the plan. In a behind-the-scenes interview with director Brad Bird, he describes an alternate opening that introduces Bob and Helen Parr at a neighborhood barbecue. There, they try to blend in as normal people, but are put in a predicament when Bob is forced to fake an injury after accidentally slamming a butcher's knife on his fingers. Even wilder is that Syndrome appears in this version to fight Bob and Helen at their home. The supervillain catches the duo off guard and even defeats them before a baby incarnation of Violet thwarts his plans. This vastly different inception of Bob, Helen, and especially Syndrome would have reshaped the entire film. Syndrome's backstory of being rejected by Mr. Incredible would likely be erased.
Fly home, buddy. I work alone.
There would be no context for the glory days of heroes and why they're no longer around. Plus, Bob's motivation to be a hero again wouldn't exist. Overall, Bird made the right choice to abandon this potential sequence, as the film's definitive opening establishes a much cleaner narrative. When thinking about Disney's impressive roster of villains, it's weird to think that Elsa from Frozen nearly joined them. But it almost happened, and there were planned scenes that focused on showing Elsa's evil powers and motivations. In an interview with Entertainment Weekly, producer Peter Del Vecchio delved into Elsa's personal story as an evil ice queen and the epic final battle that would have ensued. Instead of being an outcast, Elsa was originally depicted as a scorned lover who was left at the altar. She then turned her heart to ice so that she would never love again and become determined to destroy Arendelle. This all led to a far more action-oriented battle scene where Elsa would conjure minions of her own, at least according to Del Vecchio. He said in the interview, the ending involved a big epic battle with snow monsters that Elsa had created as her army. Where the ending of Frozen is more emotional, this modified version is much more chaotic and combative. It would have left a different impression on viewers and possibly could have established itself as one of the darker princess movies in Disney's history. We'll never know what this movie fully could have been, since Elsa's evil arc was nixed early on in the proceedings. But maybe one of the upcoming Frozen sequels can make this massive fight concept a reality. One of the more iconic moments of Raiders of the Lost Ark is undoubtedly when Indiana Jones proves that a gun can outduel a sword any day. However, Indy was originally supposed to use another one of his trademark weapons in this bout. During an AMA session on Reddit, Harrison Ford talked about how this scene changed due to him being sick on the day of the filming. He wrote, "It was meant to be the ultimate duel between sword and whip. I was suffering from dysentery and really found it inconvenient to be out of my trailer for more than 10 minutes at a time." With the proposed fight likely taking multiple days to shoot, Ford suggested to director Steven Spielberg that he just shoot the swordsman, and the rest is history. While the original idea of Indy using his whip to take out not just one, but a bunch of blade-wielding baddies sounds awesome, what we got is much more fitting to Indy's style. More importantly, the slick gunshot from Indy grew to become an iconic piece of his legacy. The Jurassic Park franchise has some of the most thrilling chases in cinematic history, especially when the T-Rex is involved. Yet there was one suspenseful sequence from the first film that never got used. According to some pre-production storyboards from dinosaur supervisor Phil Tippett, there was a scene where Alan Grant, Tim, and Lex attempt to sidestep a T-Rex at a nearby jungle lagoon. Tippett's illustrations see the trio arrive at a serene lagoon to find a path towards safety. Unfortunately, the only things they discover are a deflated raft, an aging dock, and a sleeping T-Rex. What follows is a tense sequence of the group quietly trying to avoid waking the beast while inflating the raft. Although they do manage to get the float working, the T-Rex gets up and delivers a big fright before the group sails downriver. Not only would the inclusion of this narrow escape help further define the relationship between Alan and the kids, but it also could have delivered a tense homage to a similar moment from Michael Crichton's novel. Although Steven Spielberg desperately wanted to include the lagoon concept, he was prevented from doing so due to concerns about stretching the budget and the effects team too thin. It's no secret that there were multiple attempts to include an incarnation of Robin in Tim Burton's Batman films, and there was even a scene planned for Robin's story to unfold in the first film. In an interview with 13 Dimension, Batman co-writer Sam Hamm revealed that they had put together a sequence for the film involving Joker slaying Dick Grayson's parents. Hamm described the scene as a wild chase where Batman tails the Joker, saying, "The Joker looks in his rearview mirror and sees, of all things, Batman charging toward him on horseback. So he panics. He swerves into Gotham Park and in the course of making his escape, accidentally kills the Flying Graysons, a husband and wife high-wire act performing as part of the Gotham Bicentennial. But their kid survives, and he's mad. You can fill in the rest." Sadly though, despite this entire concept being completely storyboarded and written, it ultimately didn't get past initial cuts. According to Hamm, the film was already going over budget, and the studio decided to axe Robin's presence from the film. If this storyline made it in front of the camera, it would have changed everything we know about Keaton's time as a Caped Crusader. Fans could have seen him as more of a mentor than a solo act, and it possibly would have reconstructed the story of Batman Returns. While fans of The Godfather were likely thrilled to see James Caan reprise his role as Sonny Corleone at the end of The Godfather Part 2, they were also probably frustrated that Marlon Brando didn't come along with him. Well, it wasn't from lack of trying. Originally, it was written in the sequel script for Brando to reappear in a flashback as Vito Corleone. However, Brando declined to return, possibly due to continual disputes with the studio. So this cameo never happened, and the final scene of the film feels a tad incomplete without it. Sure, Francis Ford Coppola was able to write Brando's appearance out of the film without much of an issue, but the final scene of The Godfather Part 2 is centered on a surprise birthday for Vito without the central figure ever showing. It's a moment that symbolizes the family coming together again, and with no appearance from Vito, the literal head of the family, there's something noticeably missing. Plus, the audio of everyone saying surprise to Vito is awkward and needs a re-emergence of Brando to make it fully satisfying. If the idea of Brando returning as Vito would have stayed intact, we'd be talking about the ending of the sequel even more highly than we already do. Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb, is an absolute classic in Stanley Kubrick's filmography, featuring a lot of wildly unforgettable moments. However, Kubrick nearly utilized an intriguing framing device for the story that would have further added to the bizarre nature of the film. One of the early drafts of the script featured a wraparound narrative involving aliens coming to Earth. In this idea, the aliens stumble on the destruction of Earth after the film's finale, and what happened is then explained in the events that follow. Even with so many mind-blowing talking points in Dr. Strangelove, this potential alien arc could have added another level of strangeness that fans probably would have loved. Just imagine getting a glimpse into the destruction of humanity before witnessing everything that led to it. It would probably change a lot of people's perspective on the film, but also take away some of the ambiguity Kubrick used to make viewers more immersed in the experience. Kubrick clearly had aliens on the brain when making Dr. Strangelove. The ending of Ridley Scott's 1979 sci-fi horror masterpiece Alien is an all-time classic. It's immensely riveting from start to finish, even though it's just a tipping point for Ellen Ripley's heroic evolution. Surprisingly though, Scott almost cut Ripley's victory short in Alien with a pitch he made for an alternate ending to the studio. While talking with Entertainment Weekly, Scott mentioned that he initially wanted Ripley's plan to kill the xenomorph to fail. In this new ending, Ripley's harpoon shot would do nothing to the xenomorph, leading it to then lunge toward her and rip her head off. After that, things become incredibly eerie, with a sequence that follows where the xenomorph mimics Dallas's voice to perform a sign-off for the captain's log. Given the legacy that Ripley and the Alien franchise have left on pop culture, it's hard to imagine what the series would be like with this ending. Despite the good and the bad that the Alien movies have presented over the years, Ripley dying in this ending would be tough for any fan to stomach. Thankfully, the studio shut this idea down. The Lion King features one of the most cherished and devious Disney villains of all time, Scar.
Long live the king.
But believe it or not, Scar was almost shown to be more vile and devious in an unfilmed scene. Through storyboards, fans can see a sequence where Scar talks with Zazu about wanting a queen of his own. Then, as Nala walks into Scar's cave, he tries to court her, hoping that she'll become more affectionate towards him. It doesn't work, and ultimately leads to the original version of Be Prepared. Overall, the situation has an unsettling vibe to it, and while it could have made Scar a more frightening villain, the scene was best left carved off. It's a little too disturbing for younger audiences to see, and adds a tinge of darkness that surely would have spurred controversy at the time. Even now, fans are mixed about the interaction, with some saying they love the original style of Be Prepared, but acknowledging that the subject matter might be a little much. Classic Disney villains always have delightful touches of evil to them, but this unused moment with Scar might have propelled the film into bleaker territory some would rather not see. One of the most memorable moments of J.J. Abrams' 2009 reboot of Star Trek is Chris Pine's Kirk meeting Leonard Nimoy's Spock on Delta Vega. However, Nimoy wasn't supposed to be the only original cast member to appear, as William Shatner was also meant to reprise his role as Kirk. As described by the film's co-writer Robert Orci during a writers' roundtable discussion for The Hollywood Reporter, they began the production process intending to feature Shatner. Orci told the publication, "We wrote a scene for William Shatner at the end of the movie, where Spock, played by Leonard, gives his young self, played by Zach Quinto, something he'd kept with him. It was basically a recording of Kirk singing Happy Birthday to him for the last time before he went off to die in Star Trek VI. While it might seem like a standard cameo on paper, it could have had a huge emotional impact on fans. Not only would this cameo further acknowledge the timeline of Nimoy's Spock, it would have also highlighted Kirk and Spock's powerful friendship. Sadly, Abrams scrapped the interaction before they started shooting, since he believed it leaned too much into fan pandering. Still, fans likely would have gone nuts for it, and many Trekkies will now be left wondering what could have been.